Hello to all my dear Manhwa lovers. I hope you're having an amazing day. First of all, I want to send a special shout out to everyone who left comments on the previous video, especially to BeansN7Q, who once again managed to leave the very first comment. You're the fastest among our followers. Thank you so much for always engaging with my videos. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this incredible recap. At that moment, he received a message, and upon checking his phone, he saw it was from Ayeon. She mentioned that she had dreamed about him that night. Curious, Kim asked what the dream was about, but she only replied that it was a secret because she was too embarrassed to tell him. As he processed this, he received another message from Seo, this time with a blushing emoji sticker, which left him slightly puzzled. He responded with a similar sticker, equally confused. Kim couldn't help but wonder if both girls truly believed it had just been a dream. He was sure they remembered what had happened in the dungeon. His thoughts drifted even further to Seo's words at the end of the mission. He hesitated about sending her a message, but just then, she texted first, asking what his plans were for the day. Kim replied that he had nothing scheduled, to which Seo, somewhat nervously, suggested they go out for a meal. Fortunately for her, he accepted, leaving her speechless and making her silently squeal with excitement. It had worked. That afternoon, Kim decided to buy some new clothes and fix his hair, hoping everything would go well. To his surprise, he even noticed that his appearance stats had increased after the preparations, something that genuinely astonished him. However, he soon realized that Seo had already arrived and greeted her immediately. She was wearing a lovely pink dress, and although she tried to hide her nervousness, she invited him to join her. They arrived at a restaurant, and Kim wasn't sure if this was supposed to be a date or not, especially since they were having soup and rice for their first outing. Noticing Seo's modern outfit, he started to think that maybe it really was a date. As they began eating Sunday gukbap, Kim wondered if Seo genuinely liked this type of dish. While he didn't mind the choice, he couldn't stop thinking about the reason behind picking this particular restaurant. At that moment, he recalled something important, a conversation from the past where Seo, slightly confused, had asked why they were eating gukbap instead of something more special. To her, gukbap seemed like an old person's meal, whereas Kim saw it as a traditional dish that any Korean could enjoy. Seo had initially thought it was just soup with rice, but after tasting it, she was pleasantly surprised by how delicious it was and admitted it had been a great choice. This had made Kim happy. Additionally, Seo was shocked to discover that such a tasty dish was available so close to her home, something Kim knew she would appreciate and hoped she would thank him for recommending. Remembering that moment, Kim realized they had been to this restaurant before. However, he wasn't sure if Seo had intentionally chosen it to relive that memory. Considering the effort she had put into being recognized, he smiled and asked her directly if her name was Anseo. This made her react with a mix of amusement and disappointment, complaining that he was too slow at picking up on these things. Kim apologized, explaining that her physical transformation had made it difficult for him to recognize her. Embarrassed, Seo wanted to know if she had really changed that much and, with a bit of hesitation, asked if he thought she was pretty. Kim nodded, assuring her that she was beautiful. This caused Seo to blush even more, recalling that she had heard those exact words in her dream. Feeling increasingly nervous, she began eating quickly. Once they finished, Seo asked if she could start calling him Appa now that he was no longer her tutor. Kim smiled and nodded, telling her she could call him whatever she wanted. Seo agreed, though she couldn't help but feel even more flustered. Just then, the sky darkened as clouds gathered, and a gentle breeze quickly turned into heavy rain. They ran for shelter, but Seo, worried that her outfit would get soaked, kept glancing outside, realizing she was already quite wet. Noticing her discomfort, Kim also felt embarrassed and slightly annoyed at the weather, especially since the forecast hadn't predicted rain. He muttered to himself, wondering if he should run to find an umbrella, concerned that Seo might catch a cold. That's when Seo offered to take him to her place since they were nearby and no one else was home. Upon arriving, Seo put her clothes in the dryer while Kim waited in her room. Looking around, he was reminded of the last time he had been there. Nothing had changed, not even the manga on her desk, which he immediately recognized. It was from the same series as the movie they had watched together years ago. Back then, he was her tutor, and she was his student. But now, things were different. When Seo returned from her shower, she found Kim flipping through the manga and commented that she also remembered that movie. Kim smiled, as it was a fond memory for both of them. Kim took the opportunity to ask if she had enjoyed her classes, to which Seo replied that the best part was being able to see him every day. However, as soon as she realized what she had just said, she blushed immediately while Kim laughed in amusement. They reminisced about the weekends they spent studying together, one of which had ended at Kim's apartment because the cafe was too crowded. Kim couldn't help but chuckle, remembering that he still lived in the same place. Excited, Seo mentioned that she would like to visit his apartment on their next outing, and Kim agreed, though he wasn't sure if she actually remembered the place. Seo felt slightly offended and assured him that she hadn't forgotten, recalling how disappointed she had been that day. This piqued Kim's curiosity, as he couldn't remember why she would have felt that way. Flustered, Seo shouted that she was a lady too, and that he hadn't even helped her find the path to righteousness. Although she was dying of embarrassment on the outside, deep down, she was happy she had said it. Kim, smiling, took her hand and promised that this time he wouldn't let her down. Seo, in disbelief, was caught off guard when Kim suddenly kissed her. She had dreamed of this moment, and now knowing it wasn't just a dream, she felt even happier. Finally, all her efforts to be seen as a woman had paid off. In the middle of their conversation, Kim noticed that Seo had brought some bread with her and jokingly commented that it seemed like a trap since they looked so fluffy and soft, as if they would be delicious. Seo laughed, not quite understanding what he meant, but Kim, curious, leaned in to get a closer look, captivated by the unexpected surprise. Seo mentioned that he could eat them if he wanted, but he felt like his soul was being corrupted, so he offered to help her instead. Inside, he also struggled with the situation, feeling a mix of emotions as he prepared to accompany Seo to her first mass. Even though they had been together in the dungeon, he truly wanted to take his time reading the Bible. However, he soon realized that there was no way to go slow. Seo seemed to be struggling. For her part, Seo wasn't sure if the chalice would help her, especially since, in her dream, she had managed to clean it a little. Even though the memory was vague, it felt like something she had actually experienced. Just as Kim was about to begin reading, Seo's alarm went off. She couldn't believe how quickly time had passed. This intrigued Kim, who wondered why she had set an alarm in the first place. Seo explained that it was to make sure her mother wouldn't catch them in the middle of the mass. With that, they had to leave her house. In Kim's mind, he wished he could take her to a magical town right away. But since they were in a residential area, he quickly realized there was nothing like that nearby. Instead, he decided they would take a simple walk before dropping her off at her dorm. When they arrived, the security guard welcomed Seo. She thanked Kim for walking her home and said goodbye. Kim, holding back his emotions, also bid her farewell. Seo quickly rushed into the building while the security guard observed Kim. At that moment, a voice called out to him in irritation. It was Navi, who had just realized that the girl with Kim wasn't Ayeon and demanded to know what the hell he was doing with her. Kim had no idea why she was there, making the situation even more awkward. Now, we go back in time to Navi, in her room, strumming her guitar, lost in thought. She remembered feeling comfortable beside Kim, but she suddenly realized how quickly time had passed and that she needed to leave. Even though it hadn't been long, Kim hadn't called her even once. She knew he had responsibilities and couldn't afford to miss work or his new photoshoot session, but she couldn't help wondering what he had been up to, especially since so much had happened in such a short time. Her first mass, being alone with Kim in a room, even the moment when they held a rosary together. The most vivid memory for Navi was the moment she had taken Kim's hand. That's why she wanted to finish her work as soon as possible. Despite everything, she didn't want to focus on it anymore. She only wanted to be with him. Her only wish was to always be by his side. At that moment, the photographer congratulated her on her hard work and asked if she planned to renew her contract, as her next session would be the last. Navi, however, felt overwhelmed. Noticing her distraction, the photographer told her she could speak freely. He handed her the outfit for the next session, asking her to check it at home and let him know if there were any issues. Navi found it a bit embarrassing due to its theme, but she decided to examine it carefully. As she walked home, Navi seriously considered whether she should renew her contract. She needed to pay her tuition, cover her expenses, and support her family. She doubted she would find another job that paid as well. At that moment, she saw Kim, who had been avoiding looking at her before, now holding hands with another girl as if nothing had happened. Realizing the situation, Navi felt a sharp sting in her chest and in a burst of emotion called him unfaithful. She hadn't even noticed that she had started crying. Normally, she would have hit him without hesitation, but upon seeing him, all she could do was weep like a child. Kim, noticing that it was starting to rain again, rushed toward Navi and begged her to leave with him since the downpour was getting stronger. He pleaded with her to listen, or she might catch a cold. However, Navi could only think that he was an idiot. If he was trying to shield her from the rain with his hands, she couldn't help but feel something. Before she could finish that thought, Kim took her hand and led her to his house, making her feel nervous. That same night, Kim went to take a shower while Navi, wearing one of his shirts, realized it was so big that she didn't even need pants. It covered her completely. As she looked around Kim's room, she was surprised that he actually slept there. She threw herself onto his pillow, inhaling his scent. At that moment, she didn't know what to do. She liked him too much. When Kim stepped out of the bathroom, he asked if she was already going to sleep. Navi quickly changed the subject, as she hadn't expected him to finish his shower so quickly. She lied, saying she'd almost fallen asleep waiting for him. Kim apologized, unsure of where to begin his explanation. Navi, though aware she should be angry, felt hurt. Even though they weren't in a relationship, she knew he had treated her poorly. Kim, realizing that Navi might be curious about his connection with Seo, prepared to explain everything. However, for now, Navi only wanted an honest answer. Had he attended a mass with Seo? Kim, nervous, could only respond that he hadn't been able to, which irritated Navi quite a bit. But at the same time, she found it disappointing. She had wanted to pray with Kim, which took him by surprise. Before he could ask what she meant, she kissed him. At that instant, the chalice began to glow, and Navi insisted that she could help him. So they began to pray for their well-being. Deep down, Navi thought that it didn't matter who the other person was, whether it was Ayeon or the blonde girl. She wouldn't stop fighting for Kim. Meanwhile, at the university, the security guard reviewed the cameras and realized that the boy he had just seen looked familiar. He recognized him as the lunatic who had been holding masses in the school's classrooms. To the guard, Kim was nothing but trash, constantly switching between women. He was furious at Kim's audacity in getting close to Seo. Determined not to let him get away with it, he made up his mind to put an end to it before Kim could take Seo from him. Back with Kim, he had received a special mission. He was to be a benevolent pastor and comfort Sister Navi as they prayed. As she knelt beside him, Navi asked if he intended to hold a mass. Kim didn't understand what she meant, but Navi was more curious about why he had gotten out of the shower so quickly. Kim tried to explain that he had finished as fast as possible so he wouldn't leave her alone. But this sounded unconvincing to her, which irritated Kim. Navi was surprised by his reaction. In a sudden impulse, he lifted her up, insisting that he was serious. After a brief moment of understanding between them, he gently set her down on the bed, hoping she would get the message. Feeling nervous, Navi asked if he was already mad at her. At that moment, the system notified Kim about the girl's religious preferences, which, if he remembered correctly, aligned with Matsuo Sere. Navi asked Kim to tell her everything he needed to if he was upset. Kim gladly accepted and, with that in mind, began reading the Bible with great intensity. To shake off his frustration, he gave Navi a few pats on the back. As he did so, the system warned him that Navi would gain experience from it, though he wasn't sure if she had some kind of ability that was driving him crazy. Navi apologized for her insolence, wanting Kim to feel more at ease. However, he could tell she was lying. She was clearly enjoying herself as they prayed. That's when Kim suddenly ran off in search of holy water. With it, he purified Navi's soul, removing a significant portion of the corruption that plagued her. Because of this, the system notified him that his mission had been completed, rewarding him accordingly. While Navi slept soundly, Kim noticed that she was completely lost in her dreams. He then opened his inventory and checked the items he had received upon completing his mission. He believed he had just obtained the best reward yet, an item called "Do You Want Money?" If he pressed the button, he would receive a random amount of clean, laundered money, ranging from 60,000 WS to 66 billion WS. The possibility intrigued him, but he hesitated, wondering if it was just in-game currency. However, he dismissed that idea since the description specified that it was actually laundered money. Still, it felt strange, almost as if he were committing a crime, but he didn't care too much and decided to enjoy whatever he got. In the end, only 2 bills appeared, just 60,000 WS. This annoyed him, as he assumed the odds of winning the grand prize were extremely low. In the early hours of the morning, to find that Kim was still sleeping peacefully. In his sleep, he mumbled something about his 60 billion WS. Navi wanted to prepare before he woke up, determined to impress him. She remembered that the previous afternoon, she had received an outfit for her next photo shoot. At the time, it had seemed embarrassing, but now she saw it as exactly what she needed. As Kim woke to the sound of birds chirping, he noticed that Navi had her back to him, remaining silent. Intrigued, he tried to get a response from her, but instead of answering, she only let out a soft meow. This left Kim quite puzzled, as she was now wearing a full cat costume. Despite not understanding what was happening, Navi continued behaving like a feline. Meanwhile, Seo was upset that Kim hadn't even texted to check if she had made it home safely. She debated whether she should go find him to make sure he was okay. Back to Navi. Before Kim woke up, she had been trying to figure out how to put on her outfit, finding it rather tricky. She wasn't even sure if it would fit her since it seemed like something she wouldn't normally wear. However, she thought that if it did fit, it would make for a perfect cosplay. At that moment, she found an item that might help her. The photographer had recommended applying a special gel to prevent chafing or burns. Now, Navi understood his advice. After applying the gel, she tried on the outfit, and to her relief, it fit perfectly. In the present, Kim was feeling quite flustered, unable to figure out when she had changed, especially since the outfit suited her so well. Just then, Navi noticed that the chalice was glowing. However, in a playful tone, she mentioned that she was waiting to have some fun with it. Upon hearing this, Kim handed her the chalice, allowing her to do whatever she wanted. Navi was delighted that he was playing along. She eagerly started cleaning the chalice, while Kim, intrigued, wondered if she actually enjoyed these kinds of games. He warned her that holy water might come out of it, something Navi had actually been hoping for since she was thirsty, and it would help her relax. After drinking a bit of the revitalizing water, she still felt traces of corruption within her soul. She pleaded with Kim to help her find the path to salvation. Even though he remained still, Navi insisted that he help her, claiming her soul was crying out for guidance. This encouraged Kim, who immediately started reading Bible verses. He recited each passage quickly and with conviction, never pausing for even a second. This filled Navi with excitement. After a few moments of prayer, Navi felt something unusual. She was beginning to experience a warmth in her soul again. She asked Kim to continue his prayers. In her mind, she thought the whole situation was absurd, as despite reading the back of the Bible in search of God's hidden path, she felt like she could become addicted to this happiness. That was when Kim mentioned he would go fetch the holy water, something she also wanted to use, as she felt that all her sins were being forgiven. The moment she used the holy water, Navi experienced a deep sense of peace in her heart. The system then notified them that they had discovered the first secret path, which would grant them additional experience. On top of that, Kim would receive extra points for using holy water in his secret prayer. After a while, Kim asked Navi if she was leaving. She, in turn, asked if he wanted her to stay. But he was asking because he sensed that something strange was happening. For Navi, everything seemed fine, although she had to attend an interview for a temporary job. Kim offered to accompany her, and she agreed, though she didn't want to mention that her leg was hurting a little. In his mind, Kim felt like everything that had happened was just a dream. However, he suddenly heard the sound of someone crying and decided to investigate. That's when he ran into Seo, who wasn't sure why she was there and had overheard everything. At that moment, a second mission appeared for Kim. He had to hold a mass with Seo within an hour, and in the second phase, win her over within 24 hours. This left Kim completely stunned, as he had no idea how he was supposed to accomplish that under the current circumstances.